Well, joining the program, first-time guest, a man who does a very, very good job covering the Detroit Lions is the one, the only Mr. Jeff Risdon. And we welcome him in. Welcome, Jeff, to the show. He's the managing editor for the Lions Wire and Draft Wire, the co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast. He's on air 96.1 in Grand Rapids. We just lost our Toledo man, and we gained a Cleveland native. So,
there you go.
There you go, Jeff. It all works out. Jeff, number one, thank you for joining the program. We appreciate you. I just want your thoughts kind of on just to start it off, Brad Holmes, how he's approached this free agency. I know at the beginning when Danielle Hunter was signed and, everyone's coming at Brad questioning his kind of thought process with free agency. What have been your thoughts on just what Brad's done so far this offseason as a whole?
I think the general theme is, the meme where, you get the stick and do something.
Yeah.
Well, Brad takes that stick and whacks people over the head with it. I'm doing my thing. Yeah. And it's not what everybody wants. A lot of people want to go out and get the big time free agents, the Danielle Hunters, the splashy trades at the trade deadline, Chase Young. That's not what this guy is about. That's not what this team is about. And for a lot of us who've been around for a long time, that can be difficult to accept. Because what do we learn in the past? Our drafting sucks, so we have to fill all these holes in free agency, and we have to build our team by overpaying for guys to get them to come here. Well, that's not the Detroit Lions anymore, guys, and that's good. Yeah. We have to learn how to be fans and cover a good football team. It's weird. I get it. But you got to let Brad cook, man, because what he's cooking tastes pretty damn good right now.
Yeah, he's crushing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it feels good to cover a good football team. Appreciate you joining too, Jeff. As always, taking the time out of your day to join us. I do want to ask this, kind of leading off that Brad question. There is a good amount of money left here. It looks like $20 million at least of cap space available. What do you see, at least in free agency heading into the draft? Do you see Brad making any more moves, or if you do, what type of moves do you think he ends up making here?
Yeah, there's still a ton of safeties out there, veteran safeties with some experience that can fit. Just go through the depth chart right now. And Brandon Joseph, an undrafted rookie free agent who made the team last year out of Notre Dame, is your number 4 safety on this team. I don't think that's going to last. It's not a good safety class, although I will advocate for some day 3 guys that I think can be pretty good. And I have a feeling that the Lions know who they are too. But it would be nice to get the CJ GJ replacement into the building would be nice before the draft, just so you know what you've got and you know what sort of safety you need. Do I need another guy who can be iffy? Do I need another guy who can be Kirby? Do I need the Tracy Walker replacement? That I would like for them to do that. And I think that I know they've kicked some tires. I don't know how seriously they've been in on it, but they're looking at, and if there's a move to be made, that's probably it. It doesn't seem like Josh Reynolds is coming back, just from some of the talk that's gone on. Interestingly, outside of Detroit, there's a lot of other teams that seem to think that Josh Reynolds is interested in them. We collectively, at least I will speak for myself and some other people in the Detroit media, we've never heard that. So I don't know what's going on there, but that's again, if you're expecting them to sign, I couldn't even tell you who the top free agent is because that's not what we're doing. But he's not coming to Detroit, but they're going to get a guy that can come in for 1 year, $6 million, 2 years, $10 million with 8 of it guaranteed and 3 void years tacked onto it. That's what they're going to do if they do anything else before the draft.
Do you think Aquandre, just quick follow-up, I apologize. Do you think Aquandre is and I know a 1 year, come back home deal. What do you think?
I loved Quandre Diggs.
Speaking our language, Jeff.
He is.
I had to throw that out there.
He is one of my all-time favorite Lions. Yes. I got to know him a little bit back in the draft process, and just loved the fact that he was the number 200 draft pick in that draft. He was my number 100 player, and I actually told him that in the first Lions training camp. And ever since then, he was really cool with me. So I would love to have him come back. He's not he didn't play well in Seattle last year. He will probably acknowledge that quietly. So you're getting a guy who's at kind of the end, but I would love for him to end in Detroit, man, and just to come back and be part of something that's great, because the longer he was in Detroit, the worse it got. And that's not fair to the legacy of Quandre Diggs. I would love to have my man back here.
Yeah, and Jeff, you kind of brought up Danielle Hunter and everyone wanting to make that splash signing. I mean, you could say DJ Reader was one. He's going to be a big impact on the defensive line. But Marcus Davenport, how big of an impact do you think a guy like that can make aside from Hutch? And a lot of people, Lions fans, are expecting, a lot out of him given his position. So what do you think his impact can be this year?
Oh, I'm kind of. I'm appreciative of the shot they're taking on him, but I look at it and he's had one good year out of 5 in the NFL. He was hurt last year. He basically stole Minnesota's money last year. 9 sacks and I think it was 9.5 sacks in his last season in New Orleans, playing in a contract year. Like he's just never really put it together for all the physical tools that he had. And like I was at the Senior Bowl, he was phenomenal down there. Like I got why he was a first round pick. He just hasn't lived up to that. Maybe the change of scenery will do him some good, but I don't expect him to be much more productive than a guy like Josh Paschal. Now, he has the potential to do more than that, but I'm not going to expect more than that. And based on the way that the Lions are paying him, they're kind of paying him that, okay, if you're going to be really good, that's great, but we're not expecting you to be more than like, a halftime player, like splitting it with Paschal or splitting it with James Houston or somebody like that, because, that. If you're a quality starting edge, you're making $12-15 million a year. Even if you're Jadeveon Clowney, like he's not. And he will make that much. So they're not putting a lot of risk on there. It's akin to Emmanuel Mosley a year ago when everybody was like excited, like, oh, we got, like this guy was the best cornerback in San Francisco, and we got him for $6.5 million. This is a great deal. Well, yeah, he was hurt and he lasted 2 plays. That wouldn't shock me if that happened with Davenport. Like it just doesn't come back for him. But if you're gonna miss on a free agent, miss short term and don't overspend for it. And they did neither of those, so that's good for me.
Yeah, Jeff, you kind of spoke on it a little bit there with the other side of Aiden Hutchinson. We know DJ Reader, nose tackle, he's going to impact the defensive line. You got to lean next to him, Aiden Hutchinson. The other side of Aiden, though, you kind of got a group of guys that you like, but you're not sold on completely. Even James. I mean, he's had, a crazy run his rookie season, but can you bank on that to happen again? What would be kind of your strategy, or what do you think Brad Holmes' strategy will be in terms of kind of getting that bookend edge? Could it be trading up in the first round? You got Laiatu Latu who could fall with the neck injury. I know Jared Verse will probably go middle of the draft. There's some options there in the first. Or can you see a scenario where maybe the Lions take this thing into the season and maybe you make a trade deadline kind of splash there? Because I'm not sure if you would agree. I like the defense as a whole, and they've improved, but man, they need just another edge. They do.
When Jim Schwartz was the coach, he said I needed my flamethrower. And I would love if James Houston could be that flamethrower, but he hasn't proven that he can be that other than like 4 games at the end of his rookie season. Like last summer, he started out starting even before he got hurt. He was down the 3rd team. Like he played his way down. It's tough to count on that. But he's certainly going to get a shot. I'm still a believer in Josh Paschal if he can ever stay healthy, but I had to put a but if there. Don't like doing that. Like they need somebody that's not a but if guy. And that would be great. Whether it's, Latu would be fantastic. I love that guy. Or you go, in the 29 range, that's sort of a weird area for like, that's high for Darius Robinson. It's high for Adisa Isaac. It's high for, a couple other guys that are in that, like, and I'm not a Chop Robinson fan at all. And I don't get Lions fans who are enamored with him. Like, he's incredible at creating pressure, but he cannot finish. Like, isn't that what people hate about Hutchinson? Why do you want another guy that can do that? Like, I don't get that one at all. I really don't. I'm praying to God that he's off the table before the Lions have to make that decision, because I can see them liking him, and I don't like that fit.
And Jeff, isn't he he's not a great run defender either. Isn't that one of his?
He's terrible.
Okay,
he's terrible. Yeah.
You can't.
He will be the guy who gets you, like, he'll have a pass rush win rate, easy for me to say, of like 22% and get you 3.5 sacks. Now he'll get Hutch an extra 5, but I want somebody who can finish,
Absolutely.
Coffee goes for closers, baby.
I love that saying. Jeff, I want to bring this up. I don't know if you've seen the last few days, but Mike Greenberg on ESPN mentioned the Lions window already being closed. And something that I've been pretty passionate about going back to the beginning of the season was I did feel like earlier this year, I felt like the Lions could make a run and going into next year, and that this could be kind of a prolonged thing, the way Brad Holmes has built this team, that, hey, this might actually be a 4 or 5 year process here. And we could, the window is very, very much open. What were your thoughts on those comments? If you heard those, and if so, are you kind of on the same side of, hey, this is something that's going to be sustainable for the next 4 or 5 seasons?
I think Greeny overreacted to a pretty good offseason by the Bears and a pretty good offseason by the Packers. And I get that he's a Chicago guy. Like that's their markets. I get that. This window is wide open for the Lions. They are at the beginning of it. They opened it a little bit further than I think a lot of us expected. I know I had them. I thought they would win the North last year and win a playoff game. Winning that second one was phenomenal. Almost winning the third one was like, oh man. That was something else. And I like, where did this team get worse? You know,
right.
That's what I don't get is like, okay, yeah, Chicago, especially if they draft the way I think they're going to draft, I think they could be the second place team. You know, Green Bay is not going to go anywhere. They've got some questions, but that's a good football team. Minnesota, I don't know, like it's a tough division, but the Lions won it last year and they didn't get worse anywhere. Like,
yeah,
I don't get why that window would be closing for them. Philadelphia, Dallas, San Francisco, none of them, the Rams losing Aaron, none of those teams are going to be as good next year as they were this year.
Yeah, and to the point Greedy made, I mean, he mentioned Chicago, which I love Caleb. I'm a big Caleb Williams guy, but you still look at Chicago. I mean, Jeff, it's tough because the reason why I believe the Lions window will be open longer and is just beginning is because of Brad's ability to draft. That's how you sustain long-term success. I mean, how often do you see teams like Chicago buy a roster and it goes well? I mean, I like the acquisitions they made, Jeff, but to bank on that, Ryan Poles has not been great. The first 2 rounds, he's been pretty solid, but Chicago to me seems like we're going all in. We're spending money. We're trading for players, and I'm not sure how that'll end.
Yeah, especially with a rookie quarterback, and you know they got some nice pieces. I'm not gonna crap on them, and I kind of like Eberflus. You know, I like the way he's reinventing himself. Like, not to play up Chicago or anything, but they're not going anywhere. But to my mind, they're a year behind where Detroit is. Like, they're coming into the year where they can maybe make a wild card and maybe steal a wild card game from like the South champ, which I think will be Atlanta, or the West champ, whether it's Los Angeles or San Francisco or Seattle revitalizing somehow. Like, I don't think they're there yet, but they're not to be taken lightly. But the Lions aren't taking it lightly. That's the thing. Like, I think Greeny is ignoring the point that, like, this is a really good football team that's young. They're in their prime with so many guys. You know, Jared Goff is not old. You know, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, all these guys are like just getting to the primes of their careers. These are the top end players on the team, like Frank Ragnow. You know, these guys are. I don't know how they would be getting worse. I don't know why that window would close. It's like others have opened. That doesn't mean that yours has to close.
Right?
Does that make sense?
It does.
We might have 3 teams in the NFC North in the playoffs next year. If that's like Greany's point, like that. There was one division last year. I can't remember who it was, but that might be the NFC North this year. It is 3 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me at all. It really wouldn't.
And Jeff, you kind of mentioned it earlier with the uncertainty around Josh Reynolds. How do you think they address that wide receiver position? Do you think they go sign another guy via free agency? Do you think they draft one? And if so, who would it be? Who do you like?
You know, this is such a great draft for wide receivers. I'm actually going through the tab that's next to yours on my laptop is open. Is my wide receiver big board, and I'm at 37 guys, and I'm like struggling. Like, there's more than that.
Yep.
Like. It's a great year to be wide receiver. You want to take one at 29? Okay. Ladd McConkey, Xavier Legette. You can get whatever you want in different flavors. Like, those are very different styles of receivers. You can get Big Johnny from Florida State. You can get Keon Coleman in that second round. You know, you can get, oh my God, there's so many.
Yeah.
If you want to go later, you know, you can get my guy Luke McCaffrey from Rice. So I freaking love that guy.
They got Malachi Corley. I like him a lot.
Absolutely, yes. Malachi Corley, who my comp for he's a poor man's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, do you want a guy like that to back him up? Like, there's so many good ones. Like, There's even dudes like Ryan Flournoy from Southeast Missouri State. Like, that's a guy that the Lions have looked at. 6th or 7th round guy, did really well at the Shrine game. A guy like Jacob Coker, Jalen. One of them's the quarterback from Miami who sucked, and the other one is the wide receiver from Holy Cross who's really good. That Coker is a potential 7th round pick. He's a big guy who's just he thrived at the Hula Bowl, thrived at the next step up. There's so many guys that they can get late. You know, they plucked Antoine Green last year. He's going to get a shot. He showed me some things in training camp last year. You know, he's got some work to do, but like the physical specimen is there, and he's willing. So you know, maybe there's some growth there. I don't think they're going to be if they're adding another wide receiver or free agent wise, it's going to be like a low key guy who's like Maurice Alexander, who's technically still on the roster as your backup number 3 slot and kick returner. One of the things that we haven't heard is the health status of Khalif Raymond. And I have asked people in the building, and they're like, I don't think they know, but if they do know, they're not saying anything to anybody. And that's one of the, I think we'll learn about Khalif's health a little bit by how much they prioritize, because he's a big part of their offense. I love that guy. They're perfectly fine with him being the number 3, number 4 wide receiver. So if they're addressing it with a guy like Leggett, then they're probably not counting on him as much.
Yeah, and they just re-signed DPJ. I mean, he could play punt returner too.
He can, absolutely. I was surprised they didn't give him a shot at that last year. And that's a guy, I covered him in Cleveland. If he ever gets a stable quarterback play, Jared Goff, he can be better than what he's been in the NFL. And this is a guy, by the way, who did have I think it was an 800-yard season in Cleveland.
Yep, better season than Josh Reynolds has ever had. That's not a slight, but he had a great year. Yeah. Before Amari Cooper showed up.
That's been my interest. Like my thought was, can DPJ or JMO, if they move on from Josh Reynolds, can one of those be the actual number 2 guy in that building? And at least that's where I thought the last couple of days when they signed DPJ is you have to that's a thought that actually goes through is who can be your number 2. And you haven't really seen it out of JMO. You've seen a little bit out of DPJ, but he didn't get many reps last year. So that was where I've kind of leaned on the side of at 29 or in that 2nd round to go get a receiver to at least have 3 guys there competing for that number 2 spot.
Yeah, that door certainly has to be open to him. And again, it's a great year in the wide receiver. I just from talking to Brad and Dan at their press conferences in Indianapolis and talking to one of their coaches at a recent pro day, JMO's their number 2. They feel really strongly about that.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. That really gets me
going. Dan was very ebullient on JMO being the number 2 next year. So let's hope it steps up. Everything's set up for him. He's healthy this year. He's not going to pray to God. He's not going to get suspended for something weird this year that isn't technically wrong. Just play. He's working with Teddy B, Teddy Two Gloves down in Miami right now. Everything's shaping up for JMO to be really good. You could sense about a quarter of the way through the season that he played last year that he finally understood, oh crap, I'm a professional football player. I need to treat this like I'm a professional. And he got it. And you can see that ladder just going up now. And if I'm not a fantasy football guy, if I were a fantasy football guy, I would be betting big on Jameson Williams this coming year. I would be drafting him earlier than what you're seeing him go in leagues right now.
So do you think with JMO, because at the end of the year he started getting a lot of targets, they're kind of going at him a little bit more. Do you think now that Ben Johnson feels a lot more comfortable? He does get a full off season now, no injury, no suspension with this team. Do you think that's a serious he's going to get a lot more targets going into this season?
They're going to give him everything that he can handle, and it's up to him to see how much he can handle. Whether he can handle 50 targets or 80 targets, and catching 55 to 65% of those would be great. I think he's got it in him. I loved him in the draft. I loved the fact that he was aggressive down the field in the way that he attacked on special teams. There's some dog there. I know he's a tall, skinny guy who's a speedster, but there's more than that. And I always worry with guys that are built like him about hamstrings and quads and injuries like that. And he did have one last year, but man, he's only shown glimpses of how great he can be in Detroit. And I'm gonna defer to Brad and Dan and Ben Johnson and Antoine Randall L. that he's going to develop into something really special in year 3.
Yeah, you're speaking right to Lions fans' hearts, Jeff. So we appreciate you for that.
I can't be the contrarian all the time.
No, I feel that, Jeff. I do. Good stuff. Yeah. We appreciate you taking the time. We'd love to have you back another time. We follow your stuff, man. So keep up the great work. Of course, you can follow Jeff on X now, formerly Twitter, at Jeff Risdon. He's a managing editor for the Lions Wire and Draft Wire, co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast. We'll have all the links in the description. Jeff, we appreciate you, man, and we'll catch you another time.
Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, guys. Oh, by the way, I am the Huge Show tomorrow, so tune into that too.
Perfect. There you go. Appreciate
Thanks
you,
for
Jeff.
having me. Appreciate it.
All right. There you go, Mr. Jeff Risdon.